The right pair of shoes can make or break someone's ability to create long-term adaptations from exercises that have the goal of improving range of motion or movement options within the body. It can also be very influential on someone's ability to find the right foot references in exercises that are trying to link up joint actions between the foot, the shin, the femur, the leg, and also the pelvis and the rest of the body. The exercises on my channel are a little different than what a lot of people are used to, but they work really well for many people because what we're doing is we're opening up space and creating awareness and trying to re-educate the body and what's efficient in terms of our movement. Let me give you an example. Let's say I have someone that really struggles to push out of one side of their body and be able to shift effectively over to the other side. In order for someone to push out of one side, we have to move from the lateral border of our heel upon heel strike to more of our foot arch right here, and then we push off with this first metatarsal head and the big toe, which will allow us to move from a position of heel strike, supination, pronation upon mid stance, and then toe off and resupination at the end. Let's say in this example, this person was stuck on the outside of their foot, or they couldn't pronate very well. If they can't get to that inner arch of the foot, then they're not going to be able to get proper toe off and push off because they're not going to be able to properly pronate and have that feed up the chain and have it work with their hip. Unfortunately, what I too commonly see is people who do actually get a positive change with some of these exercises. But as soon as they get up and they walk to their car or they walk out of the door, if their foot doesn't know how to work with their hip, or they have a pair of shoes on that prevents them from doing that as they need to, then they might revert back to what they were doing in terms of their previous movement pattern or compensation. Before I get into what constitutes good shoes, I want to preface this by saying shoes are just a tool, and this is a really important concept because shoes are not a fix-all for everyone. They are there to help the foot work with the rest of the body, but they're sort of an intermediary. And what I mean by that is they're there to help provide short-term support, potentially long-term for some people. But the idea is that people do not need to be in these specific types of shoes for the rest of their lives. They should be a teaching tool for your body to start to integrate the things we're trying to get in some of these corrective exercises. My goal for anyone I'm working with is to be able to have them wear any shoes they want whenever they want. But in the meantime, at least initially, it can be helpful to have a good pair of shoes that gives their foot the reference they need while they work on the foot mechanics they need. Let's take Nike Flyknit for example. And yes, while those shoes can look dope, they don't actually give your foot a lot of reference and support because they're basically just a glorified sock which bends anywhere, and that's not going to give the reference to the foot that we often need. In the context of what I'm talking about with what most people need and benefit from the qualities of a good shoe, it should only bend in the toe box. So if I take this shoe right here, bend it, notice how it's only bending in this area right here. This is because this is how our foot actually bends when we toe off. So that's one thing I'm going to test for when I look at someone's shoes. The other thing is that the back heel counter should not be able to easily push in. So if I push this right here, this is pretty stable and this is giving my heel stability and reference so that the rest of my foot can move. Finally, there should be limited outside heel give as well. If you take the outside of the shoe like this and you press in on it, it shouldn't easily collapse in. If it does, that can also compromise the stability of that ankle. The other quality is that it should be symmetrical from the back. So if you look at this shoe right here, you could tell that there's no elevation on one side or the other. It's very flat, and that's what we're looking for here. In addition, there's a couple other things to keep in mind. A good pair of shoes should feel comfortable right away. There's no breaking them in. There's no needing to put miles on them in order for them to feel better. It should be literally immediate. If not, it's probably not for you. The other thing I look for is that when this person stands up or balances on one leg, they can sense their heel, their big toe, first met head, and their fifth met head supported within the shoe and contacting something. If not, then it's probably not enough support for them. And this is the really cool part. I'll know a pair of shoes is good for someone when I take an assessment, put them in that pair of shoes, and all I'll have them do is just walk down and back in this gym right here. And then once they get back to the table, and I know it's not a lot, it's maybe 20, 30, 40 yards max, I'll retest them. If they show an improvement in their assessments or they maintain the adaptations they got from previous exercises, then that's a good sign that that pair of shoes is ideal for them. What's even crazier is that shoes influence the upper body as well, significantly. Here's someone that has some shoulder issues, some knee issues as well, but when I measured them initially, they had some pretty locked up shoulders. And I had them just go for a little walk, retested them, and what I found was this pair of shoes had a dramatic improvement in their range of motion in their upper body. Now that's pretty crazy, right? Well, to make it simple, a lot of this is really neurological. So if the body is able to sense the right things as it moves through the gait cycle and the foot references are on point for what that person needs, then oftentimes that loosens things up the chain because the body has a higher degree of safety, a higher degree of rotation available to it, and things sync up a lot better. Now I'm going to get into specific recommendations for specific types of people. Keep in mind, these are generalizations. It usually requires someone to take a good look at your foot and how you walk and how you move and other assessments, but this can give people an idea for what is helpful potentially for them. The recommendations I'm using are from a shoe list from Postural Restoration Institute. I will link it down below. They update it every year. So if you're watching this a couple of years in the future, they will likely have an updated list for that year to look at. For people that tend to have higher arches and an unstable ankle, we want to put them in a shoe where they're going to be able to A, get that ankle stability, but B, have a reference for that arch so it has something it can sense to pronate into. A good example of a shoe for someone like this would be the Asics Cumulus 23, and I have no idea if I'm saying the names of these shoes perfectly right, but I'm gonna do my best. In the mesh. Another option for someone with a higher arch that has probably a little bit more of a pronation issue would be the Asics Nimbus 23. In order to determine how rigid someone's arch is and how well they can pronate, we tend to look at the foot like this.
What we're looking for during this activity is that as Connor moves from this plantar flexion angle into dorsiflexion, his foot pronates and we see this heel translate backwards. At the same time, we want to make sure that he can keep his tripod, so that's that knuckle of the big toe, pinky toe, and heel on the ground. What we don't want to see is him slamming his big toe into the ground as he moves through pronation. So what's really important for this setup is that he starts with this plantar flex shin angle. So now what I'm going to have Connor do, starting this more plantar flexed position of his shin, he's going to feel his weight more so on the outside of his heel, that lateral part. He's going to lead with his hips, kind of turning into that back leg. And he's going to feel that weight shift onto the inside edge of this foot. And as he does that, I see that heel translate backwards and this knuckle of the big toe push into the ground somewhat, and that arch flatten out. So Connor's just gonna do one more rep for us, starting in that more plantar flex position, pushing through. You can see that heel drop back, his big toe is here, and that knuckle of the big toe is staying in contact with the ground. What we wanna watch out for during this activity is that as Connor's moving through it, his toes don't change color at all. We can see the foot is very relaxed. We're not seeing muscles tense up in his foot as he's going through it, and that it looks like it's a nice, smooth, fluid movement. Last thing we want to watch out for during this drill is that as Connor's moving through it and he's going into that dorsiflexion, his knee is ending up roughly between his first and second toe. What we don't want to see, which Connor's going to demo now, is that knee really dump in. We're just leading with the hips and everything is following down the chain.
The shoes I'm using for this video are the shoes that I wear, and these are the Brooks Adrenaline 22s. These are great for me because I have an average arch. If someone has an average arch and they can find their heel pretty well, but they can't move through the arch of their foot and push off with the big toe, it will be the Brooks Dyad 11. If someone has a completely collapsed foot when they walk or when they stand, the Brooks Addiction 15 can be a good option for them. The other consideration is someone's ability to get big toe extension. And this is important because in order for us to go from our heel to our arch and to actually toe off, this big toe needs to properly extend. If it can't, we often see issues where they go on the inside edge of that foot as they push off, and they often have some sort of callus or bunion built up here. We want to make sure we're maintaining a tripod, so that's going to be this first metatarsal head right here, and the fifth one right here where the ball of the big toe and the little toe are, and this heel right here. So all 3 points should stay on the ground. And then what we're gonna do is try to lift the big toe independent of the other toes, but most people will struggle with this. So just try to get the big toe as high off the ground as you can, nice and controlled, without ever losing that tripod on either foot there. If someone has a big limitation in their big toe extension, a shoe like a Hoka, where it has a good bit of cushion to it, can be helpful specifically for these people, because when that person's walking their shoe on concrete or some hard surface, they're not going to be able to adequately get the big toe to push and extend. But if I have them in a little bit more cushion, then what that allows them to do is have something softer to press into to allow that big toe to get more extension more easily. Depending on the rigidity of their foot, we usually are looking at these options. Generally what I'll do is I'll have someone come in the gym and I'll have made 2 to 3 recommendations of pairs of shoes. I'll have them try them on, walk up and down, and then retest them. I'll have them keep the one pair that I like the most for them, and then I'll have them return the other 2. So just make sure that if you are getting multiple pairs, make sure that you're buying them from somewhere that allows for returns. I'll start to know it's time to move away from those shoes once I see them start to hold on to adaptations without the shoes on. So after a period of a couple of weeks, we might do some more testing without the shoes on. We might be progressing their exercise program. Also, we may have been doing more specific footwork, and those adaptations have started to stick over time. So then we can try putting other pairs of shoes on, doing the walk test, and then seeing what happens.